Hey guys, and welcome to the third episode of the Ash Christine Designs podcast. My name is Ash, and I will be your host. This is a podcast about knitting, crochet, and any other crafty adventures I get up to. You can find me on Instagram as Ash Christine Designs and on Ravelry as Ash Christine. There is also a group for this podcast on Ravelry. If you head to Ravelry and you search Ash Christine Designs in the groups, it should pop right up, but in case you don't want to do any of that searching, I will leave a link to it in the description box below. You can also find any of my patterns on both Etsy and Ravelry. I'll have both linked in the description box below, and I have just now started importing my patterns into lovecrafts.com. I am still figuring that out, so not everything is in there yet, but it's a work in progress. We'll get there one day. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. And if this is your first time checking out the podcast, hello and welcome. And that leads us straight into works in progress. I don't have any finished objects this week, hopefully next week. If you're a returning viewer, you might have already picked up on this, but I am using a mic today. I noticed when I was editing the podcast episodes that the audio was a bit quiet, and I didn't want to continue on with that when I knew that I could find like a quick, easy solution. So today I am using a lav mic, and hopefully that helps with some of the sound. I am still figuring out like the background and kind of like where I want to actually record these episodes, so the background may change in the future, but hopefully this mic fixes the sound issue. Alright guys, I had to adjust the windows because it was giving a pretty bad glare and it was blowing out everything I was trying to show the camera, so apologies if the lighting has shifted and it's kind of like weird, but I did have to adjust that a little bit. But I am ready to talk about my first work in progress. And if you've been following the podcast for a little while, you may guess this already because of a certain obsession I have recently, but I'm knitting another pumpkin. Yes, I know. Good gosh, I fixed the lighting and it's still... Okay, so that's a little bit better. It's still getting pretty blown out. But it's just a white pumpkin. Hopefully you can see those details, okay? But I'm just a few rows into the cable repeat. I haven't even done the first cable row yet. I am following my pattern that I released last week. Yeah, I released it on Friday. Was Friday last? Yeah, Friday was last week. Friday was last week. Of course, Friday was last week. Every week has a Friday, Ash. What is going on with you today? Anyways, yes, I released this pattern on Friday, October 9th. If I remember to, I will pop a picture in right here so you can see what they look like. I wanted to talk about the Hello Gorgeous pattern because a tester of mine, if I remember to, I will place her picture right here, but a tester of mine, the lovely Anna, shared a photo of her finished Hello Gorgeous pumpkin, and it's so incredible. And first of all, that's kind of what inspired me to even think about knitting a white pumpkin. I hadn't even thought about that before, even though I know pumpkins, you can get them in white. She shared her picture and she tagged Knit Picks in her post, and because she'd used their Wool of the Andes. And Knit Picks shared that image to their Instagram stories, which was so cool because it's just so cool because I was just scrolling through my Instagram and I saw that they had shared it and I was like, oh my god. And in came a flood of followers to me, and I believe that my tester also received followers from it. I know that I had a bunch of people come over from there to purchase the Hello Gorgeous pattern, which if you're one of those people, thank you so much. It's wild. It's so wild. It was, they shared it on Monday and it was crazy because I just had people just flooding in. I had people leaving comments. I had people sending me messages saying like, oh my god, I love your pumpkins. And it was so weird because before I'd seen the Instagram story from Knit Picks, I was like, where are all these people coming from? Like, I know that it's like a recent pattern and it was just released on Friday, but like, what's going on? It was so wild, but so good as well. Cause to see so many people be like, oh my gosh, your pattern, I love it. It's it's so great, whatever. I'm going to knit it like a ton. That's such a great feeling because sometimes as a designer, you create things that you're like, this is something I really like. It's something I'm really, really passionate about. And sometimes you release it and there aren't as many people that are as passionate about it as you are. And that's okay, that happens. But to see the reaction to this, it was really good. It was really nice. So again, if you're one of those people, thank you so much for purchasing your copy of Hello Gorgeous, and I can't wait to see everybody's pumpkins. Oh, if I didn't say, I am knitting this pumpkin using US size 7 needles as what's called for in the pattern. I am using my US 7 4.5 millimeter Chiaogu red lace. Whoops, the yarn wants to fall. It's the Chiaogu red lace. I always forget to talk tools. I always do. I'm always like, remember to talk about, you know, the specs of this and the specs of that. And then I'm always like, did I even talk for a second about the needles? Sometimes I even forget the yarn. I'm just so excited to talk about things. I love things. But I am using Caron Simply Soft in the white colorway. The person I am making this for, I believe she's allergic to wool. I think that's what she told me. I can't remember. Either way, she requested that it not be wool. So here it is. Just regular old Caron Simply Soft. Okay, and the next work in progress I want to talk about is a cardigan for my sister. I'll go ahead and show you this, and then we'll talk specs. Oh my gosh. It looks really, really good on camera. By the way, that is not a camera flare. The dual tone here, it is a gradient yarn. So don't worry, you're seeing it right. And I'll give you a close-up on this lace repeat. And then it's reversed on the other side. This is the sleeve, by the way. And then the lace portion is reversed on one side than it is on the other side. Ah, I love this so much. This is a pattern by, I believe her name is Anita Kreb. I will put her name on the screen. I will also link to it in the description box below. I can't remember her name. I know it's by the same woman who did the Celtic Myths shawl, if any of you have ever did that. It's the, and I'm going to butcher this because I don't know how to pronounce it, the City Spinnet, Sidispinit. I'll put that on the screen. But yeah, this is by her, and it's such a gorgeous pattern. And so the reason that I started this is that my sister was looking through some yarn stash and found a couple skeins and was like, do you think this would be enough to knit a cardigan for me? And I was like, probably. So we went through the Ravelry database together. I showed her a couple of options that I thought would work because it is a gradient yarn. And I showed her a couple of options I thought would work. And I talked her through kind of like, I didn't want to do a, what do you call them? You start from the bottom and you work your way up, and then you join here at this, oh my god, I can see it in my mind. A set-in sleeve, I think it's what it's called, a set-in sleeve sweater. I told her, I was like, I don't really want to do that because it would disrupt the color change when you pick up for the sleeves, or especially if you're knitting the sleeves from the cuff, from the cuff down, and then you join at the shoulders, you just like seam it together or whatever. I told her, I was like, that would disrupt the color change too much, and like I could finagle it a little bit, but I was afraid even with finagling it would get to whatever. I'm also working against the yardage here because I only have 3 balls of this, and it's only 590 yards each, so we'll see. Okay, I just readjusted everything again because the glare is really, really bad, and for some reason the glare is not going away. So I apologize, but you're going to see glare off this. This is the Lion Brand Cupcake yarn. Okay, that's pretty good. Lion Brand Cupcake, and it is in the Coffee Break colorway. Hopefully that'll show up. Yep. Okay, and those are the colors in there. So it started out with this dark gray, as you can see at the bottom there, and then it's transitioned into this light kind of cafe mocha style colorway, almost like a latte colorway. Yeah, I still have all of that to do for the first ball, and then I do have 2 more of this. And since it's an open front cardigan, I don't have to worry about going back and picking up the button band. Hopefully, I should have enough yardage, but we're going to see. We're going to see. But yeah, this was, she dug through some stash yarn, found this, and asked if I would make her something with it. And I said absolutely, because it's very rare for her to go through stuff like that and specifically ask for something, because oftentimes, you know, I'll just show her something and be like, do you want this? And then she'll say yes. But for her to specifically ask, I was like, okay, yeah, we need to make this happen. Okay, and the next work in progress that I want to talk about today is the Oxford Street pullover. This is a design of mine that, sorry if you can hear that truck outside. This is a design of mine that I have spoken about on the podcast a couple of times. And sadly, I have not split for the sleeves yet. I'm very, very close. I'm within like 8 rows of splitting for the sleeves. And I was trying to get there last night. I was like, let's try and see like as far as we can get to split the sleeves, but it just didn't end up happening. And that's okay, you know? So that's the front, as I've shown before. It's just this, oh my God, it looks so good on camera. Every time I see it on the little screen, I'm like, that's really good. Okay, so this is, first let me show you how far I got from last week. So last week when I showed this, I was here, I placed the stitch marker after I finished recording, and I have knit all of this. I still have, like I said, I'm still 8 rows away from splitting for the sleeves, so I still have 8 rows more of increasing, which is why, I don't know about you guys, but every time that I get close to the sleeve separation and it's like only a few rows left, it starts to slow down so much. And I think part of the problem is that I do have it all crammed onto this 24-inch cable, which I should talk about before I forget. I always forget to talk about my tools. I'm using my Knit Picks interchangeables in the nickel-plated options one. It's the purple cable. Let me see if I can scoot it out far enough to show you the purple cable. It's kind of hard to see. There's not a whole lot of cable room left because, like I said, they're crammed on here. Like, I don't even know if you can tell, but it's crammed on here. But yeah, just a couple more rows to do this, and then I will be splitting for the sleeves. The yarn I'm using is Lion Brand Pound of Love, and I've spoken about this before and said that it's a stash yarn, so try not to judge the ball, but it got really bad yesterday and the day before, so really try not to judge the ball this time. But it's just Lion Brand Pound of Love, and it's in the Oxford Gray colorway. This is a worsted weight yarn. It is 1,020 yards. This, I can't even with this. So I decided to use this yarn for this design for a couple of reasons. A, it was in my stash, so might as well use what you have. And B, while it is fun for me to, be like, oh my God, I'm gonna knit this design out of, 10 skeins and it's gonna be amazing. I also know that there are people out there that maybe can't afford to do so and maybe can't, be able to follow the same materials that I'm using. So sometimes I do like to challenge myself and see what kind of like more budget-friendly yarns that I can use to create a design to show that it's not necessarily the yarn that matters. It's, you can create anything beautiful with any materials, and it doesn't have to be the top budget materials. Yes, of course, everybody enjoys working with wool. I mean, those who aren't allergic. And, more of the high-end yarns, but there's also nothing wrong with creating a sweater, out of something like this. And again, because I had it in my stash, I figured, why not use what you have instead of spending, time and money researching for what yarn would be the perfect fit for this design? Use what you already have. Sorry about that. I got interrupted and now I can't even remember what I was talking about. I think I was discussing yarn and how you can use whatever yarn you want to use. I have testers sometimes that'll be like, I want to test your pattern. Is it okay if I use, and I'm always like, yes, use whatever you want. Use your stash yarn, buy new yarn, use natural fibers, use acrylic, I don't care what you use, I know that there are some designs that lend themselves better to, more natural fibers and some that, lend themselves more towards non-natural fibers. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's room for everything, And I would never want to make someone feel like just because I used this high-end yarn or whatever, that they needed to use that too, or that they should not talk about their project because they're not using high-end yarn. So I'm trying to design more with some of these more budget-friendly yarns. I think it's really important and it's a great challenge to step outside of your normal toolbox and use maybe tools and materials that you wouldn't normally use, because it is a great challenge, but you also never know what you might discover. Okay, and the next work in progress that I want to talk about is actually soon to be a not work in progress. I am going to be ripping this out It's really sad. I've already made my peace with it. But I've left it on the needle so I could talk about it today, because I'm one of those people, whenever I hear someone be like, I'm going to rip this out because it wasn't working, I'm like, why though? Like, I'm curious, why wasn't it working? I always want to know those little details because I just think it's fascinating. But if you've watched the podcast before, you have heard me talk about this. This is my lace weight cardigan. I'm sorry, not lace weight. It's a light fingering weight, but it is a lace repeat cardigan. This is a design I'm coming up with, and it will be available hopefully by next autumn. Last week or the week before, I was talking about how I wasn't sure if it should be a spring or autumn garment, but I think that I'm standing strong with it being an autumn garment. Like, look at the yellow. That's a perfect autumn shade, isn't it? Okay, so let's talk why I'm ripping this out. For a couple of reasons. A, I'd have to double check my notes, but I believe I'm accidentally following the wrong size. It doesn't happen often for me, but it does happen. When you write up your own pattern and you're like, okay, yeah, this is this sizing, this is that sizing, sometimes you can get confused and accidentally cast on the wrong size. I'd have to double check my notes, so I'm not entirely sure that I'm knitting the wrong size, but I'm pretty sure that I am. Okay, so a couple of specs, other than the fact that I might be knitting the wrong size. So originally when I started designing this, I designed it with kind of like just myself in mind, of like, oh, I don't really wear cardigans with buttons. I prefer to leave them open. And then after I got a few repeats in, I was like, well, maybe I could just make notes for others. If they want to include, actual buttonholes and buttons in theirs. And then the more that I started thinking about it, the more I'm like, even though I wear my cardigans open, I want the option of having buttons. So even if I decide 90% of the time I'm going to wear it open, that 10% of the time I want to be able to button it if I want to. So this is my original button band. It's just a little ribbed button band. And I still really like this. I'm calling it a button band, but you know that there are no buttonholes in it. But I'm still really, really happy with this button band. And I'm debating on whether or not I'm going to use this same button band or if I'm just going to switch entirely to garter. I feel like because it flows directly from the, the collar ribbing, that it looks really, really good. So I have a couple options where I could swap the neckline for garter stitch instead of rib stitch, and then I would swap this button band to garter instead of rib. But I do like the way the rib looks, so we're going to play around here and see exactly how I want to place the buttonholes, and I'll do another swatch and figure that out. But those are kind of like the main things, the main reasons why I'm ripping this out, is that I do believe that I'm following the wrong size, and I will double check my measurements and double check the pattern notes, but I'm pretty sure that I accidentally cast on for a size smaller than what I was intending to cast on. So with that in mind, I do plan on ripping this out, and it's really, really sad. I know it's really sad, but I've worked through it. It's going to be okay. I swear, there have been so many distractions today. I just had a couple phone calls, and I swear, I feel like the universe knows right when I'm about to record, or when I'm in the middle of recording, because it's like everything goes wrong. It's okay. So the last work in progress I want to talk about is quite the beast. This is a crocheted blanket. It's a ripple blanket. Oh my god. That's what it looks like. It's quite long. I'll see if I can give you a slow pan up. And that's the bottom where I started. So I'm doing, I don't know how well it's going to show on camera, or even if you can tell, but every 11th row is a gray one. And that's so that when I put the border on, it kind of matches with everything else, and it looks really good. When I look at it in person, it's really obvious that it's a, the gray stripe is there, but when you see it on camera, I don't think it's as obvious that it's there on purpose. Ooh, that's heavy to hold up. If you've been following me on Instagram, you might remember this, but I made a Pinwheel scrap blanket for my mom. The Pinwheel scrap blanket is a pattern by Mina Phillip of the Knitting Expat podcast. I will leave a link down below to her channel and to the pattern, as well as my project page on Ravelry. But I had leftovers from the Pinwheel scrap blanket, so this is what those leftovers have become. And then I have even leftovers from this blanket, which are going into another blanket. I have issues. I start so many blankets, and then I'm like, you know what I need to do? Start another one. It's a problem, honestly. I have a friend that teases me about it. She's always like, are you casting on something new? Is it another blanket? To be fair, I kind of deserve it. Like I said, that's being crocheted out of worsted weight yarn, and I am using a US size eye hook. I believe it's a 5.5 millimeter. I'm using a boy hook. I don't have it in the room with me. It's in another project bag because I haven't actually worked on this blanket in a little while, which is so sad because it's so close to being done. It's within, I think the last time I measured it, it's like 8 inches away from being done. So I could pretty much have that done in a couple of nights, but I'm one of those people, it's just not piquing my interest right now, so I would rather work on my sweater cast-ons that I have. So sadly, don't expect that as a finished object next week. But I would like to put some more work into it, which is why I showed it today, because I would like to be able to be like, in a couple weeks' time, be like, look, it's finished. But I don't think it's going to be done by next week. But I'm still really enjoying it. I cast that on, I think in 2017. So it's been a work in progress for a really long time, and I should probably finish it before I start any new blankets. But you know how these things go. You always tell yourself finish before you start, and then next thing you know, you've cast on 8 new things. Okay, and that wraps up this week's works in progress. Now I'm just going to move right on into some general chatter. I was catching up on Natalie of the Nitty Natty. I'm catching up on her channel, and she had a video recently that wasn't an official podcast. I don't remember what she called it, but basically she just went through and made a list of things that she needed to get done, knitting-wise, and, you know, there were things like fix the ribbing on her weekender light and weave in some ends on a pair of socks and things like that. And I found that so fascinating because the way that she had it set up and the way that she, like, did her things is exactly the way that I do mine whenever I have, like, a chunk of time and I'm like, okay, well, let's see, like, how many of these things that you can get done and you know, whatever. I just found it so interesting because when she was talking about it, I was like nodding along. I was like, yeah, that's so me. Like, absolutely, that's what I do. And I just think that that's so funny because you always see other people and you're like, oh my God, they must like work so differently than how I do. And then, you know, they actually sit down and they talk about it and it's like, wow, okay, that's quite similar to the way that I work. And it's just funny to me that the way that those things work. But I mentioned that because she actually, when I was watching that, I was like, you know, I should do this tomorrow when I have like a good chunk of time. I had some time between tasks. I was like, yeah, let's do this too. Let's make a list and see what you can do in between those two things. And it was really, really good because I was like, okay, I, you know, finished this. I wove in the ends on that. I cast on this. It's like, I did the math for that. I refigured, you know, this chart, and it was excellent because I was just crossing things off. And so I was like, Natalie, you inspired me, and thanks for that, because some of those things really, really needed to get done, and they've been sitting for a really long time, and I just hadn't gotten around to them. So thanks for the inspiration. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that Kay of the Crazy Sock Lady podcast, I don't know if you follow her, but her and her family are currently in a cross-country move, and while they're in the middle of this move, she is actually running a pattern sale. I believe that the pattern sale is 25% off, but I know that it runs until October 26th when they move into their new house. And I wanted to mention that here because I actually love all of her patterns. I've bought so many of her sock patterns because her sock patterns are like the easiest thing ever to work with. I'll pop a couple pictures here if I can. Her patterns are like, they're such great sock patterns. They really, really are. It's obvious that she's somebody that really, really knows her sock construction and her sock method and knows, like, I mean, she knits socks all the time, so it doesn't surprise me. But you can tell from her patterns that she really, really knows what she's talking about, and she's really put a lot of thought into how the stitch pattern plays with the socks, and it's just really, really good and incredible. So if you're interested in that, I will leave a link to her Ravelry shop below, and you can check it out. You will have to go to her Instagram page because I don't remember the code for the 25% off. So if you just go to Instagram and you search the Crazy Sock Lady, or if you just click the Instagram link I'll have below for her account, You can go to one of her posts and see where she's talking about the sale. I just thought that I would mention that here because I know that there are a lot of times people don't know about sales, and she's one of my favorite designers. I love to follow her and see what she's up to. So if you're interested, maybe check her out and see if there's anything that you want to grab at a nice discounted price. Okay, and I think that that is all for today. It's been a bit of a weird one. I've been a little out of sorts, but hopefully next week it'll be better. There's just a lot going on this week and things that you got to pay attention to, and it's been a week, you know. I'm chalking it up to the fact that I'm having a pattern release next week. Every time that I have one coming up, I always get so scatterbrained the week before, so I'm chalking it up to that. But that does end this week's podcast. I want to thank you so much. What is going on with the lighting? I swear. The sun keeps going like behind clouds, and then it's like, oh, it's too dark, and then it keeps coming out full force, and I'm like, now I'm glowing. Anyways, I want to thank you so much for checking out this week's podcast. If you're not already, consider clicking the big red subscribe button below to be notified when I upload next week's podcast and all future episodes. And if you enjoyed this episode, maybe consider leaving a comment or hitting that like button below. It really does push it out into the YouTube space towards people that might be interested in this type of content. So if that's something that you can do, I'd really appreciate it. And I know that this episode was a little scatterbrained, but I will have links to everything that I talked about. So if anything wasn't clear enough or you have any questions, just let me know. I feel like I was all over the place. Who knows? Maybe I'll start editing this and sound much more put together than I think I did. But again, thank you so much for checking out this episode. I hope to see you back here next week. I hope that you got some knitting done. I hope that you enjoyed a nice cup of coffee or maybe some tea. And I will see you guys next week. Take care. Bye.